Here are the most unusual road incidents. These images are taken in the middle of an Italian highway, and we can't thank the driver who took them enough, because they offer us a moment of frank hilarity. Presumably, the driver in his black vehicle had purchased a refrigerator earlier in the day. Rather than have it delivered, he prefers to carry it in the trunk of his car to his house with the help of his friend. But the refrigerator is too big and the trunk of the car not spacious enough. As it happens in these situations, the carrier uses bungee cords, which keep the trunk half open while securing the goods. Either the simple idea did not occur to our man, or he did not have the opportunity to get one. In any case, he resorted to a much less usual procedure. One of the two had to drive. As for the other, his role would be to manually prevent the trunk from closing during the whole trip. To do this, he would have to huddle inside the trunk next to the refrigerator. No one has ever done this, even less on a hot day, but our man is very helpful and does not shy away from this task, as unpleasant as ridiculous. The pictures show him in the middle of his mission, clutching the door with both arms, his back to the floor, and his bald head clearly visible. It is certain that the adventure ended very well. Muscular arms are worth bungee cords. On the other hand, the unfortunate man must have suffocated from heat in his sustained effort, and we can bet that he has little desire to try the experience again. A surveillance camera recorded a sequence that is both comical and strange. The scene takes place in China. The driver you see here is trying to get out of an underground parking lot in a Porsche Macan. First, he carefully maneuvers his luxury vehicle. He manages to get out without any trouble. But as he makes the final turn, everything goes wrong. We don't know why. Instead of slowing down and turning, he accelerated without turning the wheel and drove straight into a low brick wall. The consequence of this bizarre oversight is resounding. The motorist in the black SUV smashes the obstacle and falls forward directly onto the square he had just left. The material damage must be important, and surely the vehicle is good to throw away after this incident. As for the driver's condition, there is surely nothing to worry about. The vehicles of this brand are designed in such a way that they protect the driver from even more devastating impacts. But what a waste! How would you explain this incredible clumsiness and incoordination of the feet and hands? This is what can happen when you are impatient and arrogant while driving. The footage is captured in India, obviously, and we see a beautiful Ford Mustang behind two motorcycles and a bus. The driver is stopped and the traffic jam irritates him. Moreover, he could not tolerate that his beautiful sports car was blocked by vulgar bikes and a public transport vehicle. He complained, honked his horn, made a big fuss, and finally decided to go around them. He overtakes the motorcycles and immediately accelerates, resulting in a sudden loss of rear-wheel traction. The sports car spins and crashes into the bus. This incident lasted only a few seconds, and that's what makes it partly so funny. The pretentious motorist, who wanted to be at the front of the line and draw attention to himself, will now have the pleasure of seeing all the curious onlookers. But he will have to repair his car at great expense, take care of his possible injuries, and above all, in the future, control his moods while driving. A driver recorded, thanks to his onboard camera, a road accident that could have caused serious damage if there were more people around. It was a truck carrying a considerable amount of logs. Its cargo of cut and limped logs was not secured, and the vehicle was driving faster than necessary, probably to meet the deadlines imposed. At the same time, a truck arrived in the opposite lane, but the road was sloping and narrow. The lumber carrier wanted to shift slightly, but was driving too fast. He loses his balance, collapses, and all his massive cargo collapses in a thick cloud of dust. The truck is completely dismembered. Perhaps there was a technical fault in the truck? Or was the truck driver entirely to blame? In any case, we hope that he was not seriously injured in the accident and that he will get off lightly. The sequence illustrates another example where during a traffic jam it is better to be patient. A motorist is driving slowly down a two-way street. To his left, there is an endless line of stopped cars. He is driving along when, all of a sudden, he sees a lawless driver driving in the opposite direction and blocking his way. This irregularity surprises him. They both stop. The illegal driver wanted to save precious quarters of an hour to avoid the trouble of waiting for a long time like everyone else. And that at the risk of endangering the motorist of the other lane. In his error, the ill-advised driver must give way. He reverses not without clumsiness because several times he is about to hit the plane trees that border the road. To these left and involuntary deviations, another comic circumstance is added. All the drivers blocked on his right and whom he wanted to overtake were happy about his embarrassment. None of them tried to help him by giving him a space to get in. The one who wanted to go faster than the others thus backed up indefinitely, and all the distance gained is now lost. Finally, some charitable drivers were kind enough to allow him to return to his place. Everything was arranged without scandal or accident. In a village in the Oise region of France, the residents are used to a most sympathetic and original spectacle. In this peaceful district lives a considerable number of ducks, always united in their movements. They live in complete freedom under the affectionate protection of the inhabitants. They come and go, crossing the gardens and the streets without ever hurrying. They are the attraction of the village. In order to protect them, the municipality had a pleasant idea: to draw duck feed on some places of the road, to encourage vehicles to give way to these strolling birds. Warning signs have even been installed, but the village ducks are wild and cross the road wherever they please. Wise drivers patiently let them pass. This makes for images that one would never tire of seeing again, as there are more than 100 ducks and they always move in single file. It makes an infinite procession. The motorists stop and let these creatures go by as they go along at a leisure pace. Unfortunately, it happens that one of them is run over, but it is quite rare, and all the villagers are aware of this. This colony of ducks is even known beyond the village, and many curious people visit the area just to see them. Another unusual and amusing scene captured by a camera on board a vehicle. The incident probably takes place in a European village. In the middle of the day, a motorist drives slowly on a road. He sees a couple in front of him. The man is riding his bike and holding hands with his partner, who is wearing rollerblades. They try as best they can to move forward at the same speed. But obviously this is not the hardest part. One sees too well that the woman is inexperienced and that if they hold the hand, it is more by precaution than by love. But this caution is vain. Nobody on the road hinders them. And in spite of this favorable condition, this double leisure turns badly. Unable to direct herself well, the woman goes in the way of her companion. They collide and fall backwards. Meanwhile, the car behind continues on its way and enters an adjacent road without any concern for the couple on the ground. That said, there is really nothing to worry about. They were going slowly and probably had the necessary protection. Both of them must have had a good laugh about their adventure and the crazy idea they had. This driver obviously doesn't know the limits of his off-road vehicle. He is seen performing a useless and bizarre maneuver in what looks like a parking lot. There is enough space to the right of him to park, but it's not quite what he wants. He prefers to try an experiment that is hard to explain. In front of him are superimposed blocks of stone about 1 meter high. He wants to climb on them. In the first few seconds, his bizarre plan seems to be well executed. The left wheel manages to climb on the stone, but the block is too high and the vehicle ends up leaning completely to the right. The failure of the experiment could not have been more complete, and it makes the filmer laugh. In these images taken by a surveillance camera, we see a parking lot where several cars are parked and a tow truck. The driver of the tow truck is in the middle of the work, without any helpers, and he has to tell the owner of the broken-down vehicle how to adjust himself on the tow truck platform. The worker must be overworked because he forgot to set the handbrake on the tow truck, as it is not quite stopped. As the disabled vehicle pulled up, it put a little pressure on the tow truck and it started rolling forward into some dense plantings. The worker panicked, and in one swift movement, he dashed for the cab to break the big machine before it hit a tree. He succeeded just in time. He had to wipe away his cold sweat with a heavy sigh and redouble his concentration in his work. This motorist in his pickup truck presents a strange case of incident denial. By some unfortunate circumstance, his tire has gone flat during the trip, and instead of stopping, he takes a dangerous and extravagant course of action. He decides to continue driving, despite the flat tire. Maybe he thinks that the problem is not so bad, and that if the flat tire remains attached to the rim, he can still ride without a hitch. Also, he is not entirely without caution. As you can see, he rides very slowly. It can handle the jolts. He is not concerned about delaying the vehicles behind him. He will continue at his speed until it becomes impossible for him to drive any further. He is filmed from a camera mounted in a car behind him, which wisely keeps a safe distance. We see the tire twisted and torn, gradually coming off the rim, while the pickup is moving forward. What is the outcome of such a funny scene? We don't know, but we suppose that the wheel finally dissociated from the vehicle and that the driver finally decided to call a tow truck. In New York, on the Staten Island Expressway, an altercation that could have turned out very badly occurred on a Friday night during the summer of 2021. A father and son had decided to go to New Jersey to celebrate Father's Day. Traffic was heavy during the trip, and somehow a collision occurred in which the father was involved. The events did not end there. Unfortunately, the other driver involved in the accident was aggressive and dangerous. Blaming the poor father, he insulted and threatened him. The father got out of his car to see the extent of the damage and was frightened when he saw the violence of the stranger. He defends himself and protests that he is driving sensibly because his son is with him. But the aggressive individual, far from accepting his justifications, goes further. He kept a baseball bat in his car. In his anger, he seized it to attack the father. The latter, seized with panic, quickly returned to his vehicle, locked himself in, and filmed the scene. His terrified son cries. What happened next must have been traumatic, but fortunately no one was hurt. The assailant simply hit the windshield with all his might. The impact was such that the entire surface cracked. The windshield was badly damaged, but not broken, and could not withstand a second blow. After this assault, the assailant fled in a vehicle that was not his. This is what the police told us. The individual was sought after that. For the father, who was on his way to a party, the adventure was more fear than harm, and we hope that his son will recover. Now, tell us which of these sequences made you laugh the most, and don't forget to subscribe and click here to watch another of our videos.